Hey folks, welcome to Bear Mountain. Today we're working on how to use our crop residue in our tunnel and use it so we don't have to haul it out and put it into a compost pile, compost it and bring it back. We're going to be doing sheet mulching over the top of our previous crop. We've got approximately a couple of months before we have to start planting in our early spring stuff in the tunnel. So in this particular area, we had our pumpkins in it. That was the last rotation, and we harvested those last week. Be sure to kind of check out our video as we compare different varieties and how well they did in the tunnel. But what we are going to be doing is we chopped and dropped it. We wetted down, it got it very, very damp. We watered it a couple of times, made sure the material on top is wet. We also made certain that the soil underneath had quite a bit of moisture to it, not so much that it's flooded, but it has enough moisture in it. And then we're going to put over the top a typical landscape fabric, a poly weave type thing that most people use for like weed suppression, or they use it in a greenhouse floor or something of that nature. So this is going to end up basically being covered for about 4, maybe 5 weeks tops. We're talking right now, it's the end of October. And so we'll be peeling this off probably in the first week of December. And there'll still be some residue left, but it should be really significantly degraded at that point that it'll break apart pretty easy and be easy to plant into it. The material we're using isn't super dry. It still has some succulence to it, so it should feed the biology pretty good. Our soil temperatures aren't going to freeze for quite some time. So I think, this good month in here will allow this stuff to rot down pretty fast. And if this works, which it should speed up our process and we won't have to haul some compost in. So let me just spin around and we'll show you how it looks. All right, the bed is about 30 to 36 inches wide. And what we're using is a 4-foot wide fabric cloth. We had a roll of this left over. And so this is going to be 50 feet long approximately. And what we're going to do is we're just going to cover this material and staple it down so it doesn't blow around inside the tunnel. You could use sandbags or anything heavy to weight down the edges, but we're just going to kind of make it easy and use some just basic ground staples. I'll show you what a picture of those look like. You can kind of see it on the screen there. These are about, I don't know, probably 8-9 inches long. And they kind of go through the plastic without damaging it, and at the same time, can kind of pin the thing down. So here's an example of the refuse. We also had some trimmings left over from our delphinium bed, which was right next to it. So we just kind of put those in there as well. And the material, you can kind of see the ground. We really got it wet. We got the roll here that we're moving down. And it's just a really simple process. We're just going to cover it and make sure that we keep it wet. We'll probably come back and just water through the plastic with a hose a couple of times. We also have drip line in there, if you can kind of see it, see the blue lines. Those are drip lines in here, so we can actually, if it looks like maybe things are drying out in the tunnel, we could run some drip irrigation on it for a little bit just to make sure we keep the soil biology damp. Once we uncover this, what I'm going to be doing is starting to treat it with Jadam microorganism solution to kind of, finish off the process and before we start planting in for the next season. So this is what it looks like covered. It's really kind of slick and clean. And what we'll do is we'll just put a staple in the plastic probably about every, 15, 20 feet. It doesn't have to be, super tied down. It just has to be flat with the surface. And the edge of this plastic is past the bed on each side by at least 6 to 8 inches. So that's going to keep the material that's in the center of the bed, squarely into the plastic and away from light. So the key to it is, keeping light off of this, keeping a relative high humidity and moisture content underneath this sheet as it occultates down. And again, the temperature in this tunnel in the daytime should be, at least 5 degrees or better warmer. And when it's sunny, it's much, much warmer. Like today, I'm in here, it's maybe 55 to 60 outside. And this tunnel is clearly pushing about 80 degrees. It's quite warm and comfortable. So since this is laying so flat, I'm going to try a little experiment. I just pinned down the ends with 3 staples on both ends and stretched it tight. And seeing, again, since we don't really have any wind here in the tunnel, if that will be good enough, because it looks like the edges are almost like, in a sense, self-sealing once we pulled it tight. So I think that will do the trick. And at this point now, it's just a matter of time and making sure we keep the moisture down, or up, I should say. And you can see over here, this is a bed that we experimented with on our non-electroculture beans. You can kind of see the sandbags on it. And although that technique works, it's kind of a little bit, well, you got to have a place to store the sandbags and all that. And so that's why I'm kind of trying to move towards the ground staples. And they're reusable and come out real easy and don't really cause much damage to the fabric itself. So the minimums I can do for stapling things down, and you can see I could get the fabric cloth real tight, as opposed to my other area over here where I left the hoops in and it became kind of more difficult, took more bags to seal it down. And so I think this way will be kind of cleaner and easier to use. Okay, here's an example of material that was occultated earlier. And this was beans, and there was a lot more biomass when we started this process. And now what's basically left is almost like a crunchy leaf mold layer. And so what we're going to do with this is we're going to put rotted grass straw, that's kind of been rotted over a couple of years and is pretty much broken down, and wet it down more, and then use JMS on it to kind of help break down the stuff further. We're not going to, fork this into the soil at all. It's just going to be staying on top as a sheet mulch, and the same idea with the rotted straw compost that we're going to put on the top. Then this area should be ready to plant, hopefully by, the first part of December, so we can start putting in some early things that we can maybe get some radishes or other green onions, things of that nature, kind of early season stuff going. So basically the whole point of what we're trying to do is to kind of stay away from hauling stuff out and setting up compost piles and then having to move the material back in. And the idea is if we can keep the residue, recycling itself back into the soil with minimal more work, then it actually, we can get to the same place as if we were building compost piles. That's the theory. Now, some potential downsides. We might be providing a home for voles. So far, we have not seen any activity of that nature. We've been blessed from the standpoint that we have a large number of cats on the place, and they're constantly walking through our tunnels and walking, the property, and our rodent population is way, way down. So they get on things pretty fast, and that's why I'm kind of feeling comfortable about doing this for a short period of time. I think if I was to leave a cover on this stuff for a prolonged period of time, like saying, oh, well, I'm not going to plant anything till January, I think I'd be asking for trouble. So I think that kind of the idea is I just want to use the occultation to kind of get it started and get well into its way, so it's already in the process of decomposing pretty fast, and use the ability to keep moisture trapped next to the material that we're trying to decompose. That'll kind of speed things up. And the black plastic will absorb more heat during the day, which will, generate, it won't be so much that it's solarizing it, but it will generate more biologic activity underneath it. So the idea is, at least when we have a sunny day like today, as you can tell it's quite bright in here, that we'll get more heat into that first layer of soil where all that biology is eating this stuff up. So anyway, that's my theory on how to handle, waste in the tunnel and get it back into the soil for the next crop. Now, obviously, if you're doing tight rotations, it's not going to work. But luckily, we're at a point here where we are able to kind of work this in as part of a rotation. So you got to kind of think of it as a rotation, feeding the soil back, But if you're under, circumstances where you just got to keep pumping it out, you're going to have to add compost to it. There's no getting around that. So anyway, thanks for watching today. And as always, guys, stay safe out there. We'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.